Thought I'd start with a bit about kind of capacity and budgeting, and just really making sure that you don't underestimate the resources it takes to deliver these projects, and that you really ensure that all of the activity in the work programme supports your existing business plan, that it's not about additionality, because delivering this has to be part of your kind of core reason to be. And in that, kind of build in capacity in the budget for additional administrative support. As Jolene said, kind of those interim reporting periods and the collection of data, whether it's yourself as a partner or whether you're trying to manage an entire cooperation project, it's really important that there's somebody in addition to your core team that's budgeted for to do that. It's really important that these networks don't, or cooperation projects don't sit with one person or a couple of people within a team, because changes to staff are as dangerous really as changes to activity programme. So budget for more than one person to attend network meetings, or make sure that kind of different people in your team are very kind of engaged in the network cooperation project. Sorry, Chris. The other thing that I think is quite a good idea to think about in budgeting is a kind of mid-project retreat, kind of like a 2-3 day network meeting. So you can really regroup, look at how the project's been going, really think about problems, or, you know, I think network meetings in themselves tend to be very short. There's so much to cover that a retreat, especially if you're looking at reapplying and continuing with a new iteration of the project, is just a really good thing to do, and it's too late once you're already in it. Interim reports are a really good idea, just to track that people are spending, as well as tracking that they're kind of collecting documentation. But you need to make sure that people are going to be spending 70% of the first instalment when you've predicted as a network. So, as Jolene was saying, kind of really making sure that the network's involved in the schedule of your cooperation project. So, you know, you talk together and you set when you think you might be spending, and kind of looking at your activity programme and really looking at when the deadlines that you're going to have as a network are, and then making sure that everyone's reporting back to the coordinator, even if it's not full reports with all of the documents, but keeping track of how people are spending. Again, assign a project lead in the core team who is responsible for that specific cooperation project. Lyft, who I worked with for 6 years, had about 3 to 4. So it was really, really critical that somebody in the core team was a lead on each of those projects. So each month, the finance manager should print a report that is given to the person that's managing that budget, and that they are filling in that form, that Excel spreadsheet, and collecting the hard copy evidence, the payment proofs, the invoices, the contracts each month, because otherwise it will become a mammoth task. Make sure that the budget holders for the cooperation project activity know what their activity number is, what the project's called, and when they get an invoice that they know is a Creative Europe invoice, they need to code it to the correct chapter, the correct activity, make sure the dates are on it, make sure that the project title's on it. So I think this lady here mentioned that, you know, you may get an invoice that isn't linked back to the project. If that happens each month, you can easily request a new invoice or ask them to kind of amend that. Something that I found out in a final report that I never thought about is that the coordinator may not have a grasp of your language. So they will receive a whole series of reports that they need to verify. And if they can't clearly see in a language that's discernible across the network. So, for example, we had Slovenian partners who possibly needed to translate for the German coordinator. And sometimes English is the best language to do that in, but to clearly mark a project title or a reason for the cost. And if there's a difference in the currency, to clearly outline what that exchange rate is so that they can link it back to the report. And again, a really kind of anecdotal thing, and it's one of the lovely things, but you'll be at a network meeting with all the partners in Portugal, and somebody will very generously say, "Oh, I'll pay." It's just don't let them. You pay with a credit card. or very easily traceable cash. It's those little things that make final reporting almost impossible. And actually, over 4 years can really add up. Those kind of that, and I think the places that I've historically found underspend are the network meeting costs, where cash tends to be kind of more freely used. And again, there are some costs that are deemed ineligible, and I don't know whether this is still the case, but taxis were never an eligible mode of transport, but they were if you could justify why. If there was, a number of people using them and it worked out cheaper than a train. So little things like that to just stay on top of. Or something that we found quite useful in the past is making sure that the third country or associate partner has the financial report form, and that they're using that and they're recording their costs as a normal co-beneficiary, and that the co-beneficiary that's looking after them can just slot those into their report. So that's another way of doing that. And my final point was just your project officer is a really important person, and it's very easy, I think, to see the commission as this kind of thing that's there, that's demanding reports. But actually, if you let them know what's going on, and not just amendments and kind of interim reports and financial information, but let them know what you're up to and send them the digital content from a lab and kind of let them know what they're funding. And yeah, just keep them involved, and you don't run into so many problems later down the line.